New York Jets offensive tackle Makai Becton seeing things make a turn for the better on and off the field. And Jason Brownlee just keeps on doing it. I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So Makai Becton, we know, has taken his share of heat over the past couple of years. I've heard from fans coming at me on social media for supporting Becton, for saying that I think he's worth hanging on to and his career can be salvaged and he's got the most talent of any player on this offensive line. And when he's at his best, he does things nobody else on this line can do. The way he ragdolls and tosses guys all over the field. This isn't to say he's perfect. Don't come at me and say, but he gave up a sack to this guy and he got beat by this guy. No one's saying he's perfect. They're saying his rookie year, that season he put together, was unlike anything I've ever seen in terms of a young offensive lineman just completely manhandling defenders. I've not forgotten that. But because of the injury he suffered in year two, because of the issues he's had with his weight since then and getting down to a healthy weight and staying on the field, let's not forget that second injury was related to the first. They occurred at different times, of course, but the second one was related to the initial. So it's not as if he's getting multiple injuries in multiple different causes. So here's a guy who played at a very high level as a rookie, got injured, and since then a surprising number of people have written him off, but let's not forget that it's still, in the grand scheme of things, a very small percentage of Jets fans. Most Jets fans still support Mekhi Becton and want him to do well. It's those few that said so long ago that he was a bust and a waste and he was fat and he was lazy and he was never going to make it. They're the ones that want that to come to fruition so that they can say, I told you so. And Mekhi Becton playing well, playing at a high level, would reflect poorly on their prediction, and they would rather just be right than have the Jets do well. But again, small number of folks. Becton turning things around at camp. If you're listening to, listen, Robert Sala, to his credit, when it comes to Becton, has probably been more harsh on Becton than any other player in terms of not as willing to heap praise on Becton and not, he's willing to call Becton out. He's even said Becton is stacking practices, where he's playing at a better level than he had early on. And he was always going to struggle. 2 full years off for any player. You're not just going to step back in and pick up where you left off. So Becton has taken a little bit of time, but now we're seeing him put a couple of consecutive practices together where he's playing well. We're hearing it from Sala. We're hearing it from fans in attendance, from writers in attendance, talking about him having quality reps. Although, let's, not to say it's been perfect, we are still hearing about him struggling a little bit with the likes of Carl Lawson, McDonald, the quicker, explosive guys off the edge. But again, keep in mind, this is a guy coming back from an injury. So we'll see what happens. But he's going to play tomorrow night. Can't wait to see it. High hopes for Becton, turning things around on the field and off the field. Seems like he took a little bit of the heat off of the Jets that he put on them a couple months ago. Now, for me personally, that was probably the only time I've ever really been critical of Makai Becton, because I just thought his comments about the Jets a couple months ago were I don't, again, and I've discussed this before. I'm not saying that what Becton said wasn't accurate, because it may have been. I wasn't there. You weren't there. All we have is his word against the Jets. But doing it publicly, I thought was ill-advised. If he had a problem with the Jets, he should have addressed it behind closed doors with ownership, with coaches, to say, look, I told you guys I was hurt. You didn't listen. But to come out publicly, tell the world, and then to say that your relationship is, it is what it is. It was very, for a guy who was fighting for a roster spot, trying to prove he had his head on straight and he was his mind in the right place, I guess I should say. I thought that was an ill-timed, ill-advised interview, but that's all in the past now, and hopefully by Becton coming out and saying, look, it may have been the surgery. Like, I could have had this procedure or that procedure. One would have gotten me back quicker, but one would have been a better idea. He's basically looking at other places. Now, I'm not even saying this isn't the Jets or this isn't an agent or someone in his inner circle saying, hey, man, clean this up. Let's rebuild that bridge. What you said was true, but we need to clean it up and just, clean slate going into the season. Whatever the motivation, Becton has taken some heat off the Jets, says he's ready to be a right tackle. That was another comment he made, and I said at the time, I think Makai Becton is going to be a left tackle. I think he's a long-term left tackle in this league. Again, depending on his health. But I think he's got the ability to be a left tackle. And so I understand him saying that, but I also said at the time he's got to understand they have another guy in the roster in Dwayne Brown who's 38, 39 years old. He's not going to learn a new position. Becton played left and right in college. He was working at right last year. He can continue working at right this year. And then, after this season, as long as he stays on the Jets and they don't move him, And that's been discussed in previous episodes. I think Becton will be the left tackle, and he just has to understand right now it's not this year. It's not meant to be. As long as Dwayne Brown is on the roster and he's healthy, he's going to be the left tackle. But Becton, listen, does he slide over if Dwayne Brown gets dinged up? Or do they move AVT? Is it Mitchell? What option do they take at that point? They will have options. Becton will be one of them. But I do believe that as long as he stays a Jet, stays on the field this year, comes back next year, I think he gets first crack at that left tackle job. But just nice to see him improving his play on the field and sort of trying to rebuild some bridges, mend some fences, if you will, with the current Jets regime. Jason Brownlee. Let's talk about him again. Why are you talking about Jason Brownlee again, Glenn? Because Jason Brownlee just keeps getting it done. Again yesterday, you saw the video from practice. Brownlee one-on-one coverage running down the left sideline. A ball looked to be a little bit over his head, and he reaches up and back with the left hand to haul it in, pulls it against his chest as he falls to the ground, and holds on. And as I've said before, the very first tweet I sent about Jason Brownlee was that if you watch enough Southern Miss games, you're going to see this guy make some plays. That, I believe, was in January, if I'm not mistaken. Talked to Dylan Terman about him on JetNation Radio during our pre-combine show as a player to watch that the Jets should be keeping a close eye on. And now everyone's got a close eye on him because basically Damian Woody, old Jets favorite. If you don't like Damian Woody, there's something wrong with you. Damian Woody saying on social media the other day that if this guy keeps doing what he's doing, because Woody was at practice the other day, this guy's not only going to make the roster, but he's going to get some run with the starting offense because he's just making play after play. So Jason Brownlee, turns out he could be a revelation. UDFA, again, one of the top guys that we projected could make this roster. Him along with Trey Dean and some others. Marquise Waters, who I really like as a guy who that versatility. Haven't heard his name a whole lot, but Brownlee has been a beast. And as I said, if you have the time, go back and watch some Southern Miss games. Watch him against Miami. That was a phenomenal game. Watch him against Louisiana. Had a really big catch and run in that game. Guy just made plays. Whether it was contested catches, leaping catches in tight defense, pulling balls away from defenders, outrunning defenders, Jason Brownlee did a lot. And glad they brought him in, and I'm glad we're seeing it carry through. And now, training camp, practice is one thing. Now we get to see tomorrow night what he does in a game and, progress from there, and hopefully big things for him coming. But another guy who ended practice the other day on a high note, Jeremy Ruckert. I don't know if for those of you who didn't hear, Jeremy Ruckert, final play of practice. Aaron Rodgers was under pressure. Quick release, threw a dart into the end zone. Jeremy Ruckert diving touchdown catch. We've been hearing Jeremy Ruckert's name far more than we did this time last year when he was a rookie. And obviously during the season, I've noted this before, I was a little bit concerned because I was high on Ruckert. I thought he would be a better pro than he was a collegian. I think I've said that a million times. I don't think I say his name without mentioning that. But Ruckert was a guy last year. It was really shocking to see him not get on the field at all. I really thought, they bring him along slow. I thought he'd be on the roster and starting early as the fullback option. We didn't even see that happen. He wasn't active early. Then once he got on the field, it was very limited basis. Only had a couple targets all year. So when the offense was really not even able to, that last month of the season when they couldn't even get a first down, let alone a touchdown, and they still weren't putting Ruckert on the field, it worried me a little bit. I thought, how bad can this guy be doing in weeks 16, 17, 18 that you can't get him a couple of targets? But now we're hearing his name. The Uzama he was on PUP early on, so Ruckert was getting a lot of reps, and we were hearing about him making plays down the field. So Jeremy Ruckert's starting to produce a little bit. So if Jeremy Ruckert becomes even, half the player that myself and others thought, that makes him a serviceable tight end. If Jeremy Ruckert can be a serviceable tight end, this class, this 2022 draft class of Joe Douglas's, has a chance to be a perfect class. And by perfect, I don't mean 7 All-Pros. I just mean 7 guys who show they can play at the pro level and are regular contributors, right? Because we know about Sauce and Garrett Wilson. We know about Jermaine Johnson. We're all expecting big things from him this year. Breece Hall, like those top 4, you're not going to find anyone questioning whether or not they can play. Now, what happens in terms of health and guys staying focused, dedicated, all that stuff, those are all other things that can derail a career. But just in terms of their ability to play football, they've shown they can play in this league. Max Mitchell, a guy who I think gets overrated a little bit, but I think that's based on exceeding expectations, right? The number of times you see a first-round pick play okay and fans like, oh, that guy's garbage because he wasn't a superstar right off the bat. It's about hitting and missing expectations. Max Mitchell was expected to have a redshirt season and not see the field. Instead, he gets a handful of starts. He plays in a bunch of games, gets a couple starts, and he looks serviceable. So you think, wow, this is a guy who wasn't even supposed to set foot on the field. And not only did he set foot on the field, he played pretty well. So I think that's led fans to sort of overrate him. And I'm not saying he's not good or he wasn't a quality player. I just think some folks are overrating him. But I think he's a guy, we've talked about this with Emery Hunt, who's talked about he thinks Mitchell can be a guy in the future that gets moved inside to guard. But whether it's at guard, tackle, whatever it may be, and Mitchell was a very good player at Louisiana. Really good in pass pro, did a really nice job. So he's another guy, played well in college, late round draft pick, well, middle round, fourth round pick, played well. And then you got Michael Clemens behind him, who was better than Mitchell last year. Saw the field even more, played 16 games, I believe. Was phenomenal on the interior against the run. And now he's going to be playing the interior even more this year. He's bulked up to 285. So Jeremy Ruckert is really the only guy in that group who hasn't done enough to show you that, okay, maybe this guy can be a productive player as a pro. And if he's taken that next step, and I said last year I thought he would take a starting job by midseason, so I'll say it again this year, and I'll be off by a year, fine. But I think if Jeremy Ruckert keeps putting in the work, I think he's a guy who can outplay somebody like C.J. Uzama and be a more valuable, versatile piece on offense. And that would give you 7 guys. And listen, you can play rookies and young guys. Doesn't mean they're good, right? Think back to the John Idzik draft class. When he bragged to the media that he had, what was it, 5 or 6 of his draft picks were playing. Yeah, and the team was like 1-8 because they were bad. None of them were good. They were all playing, but the team was so bad that you could play them. There weren't a lot of guys on the roster better than the rookies, but the rookies were bad, and the team was losing. So just saying you have guys playing isn't necessarily a good thing. However, in this case, these guys aren't just playing, right? Sauce isn't just playing. Garrett Wilson wasn't just playing. Michael Clemens wasn't just playing. These guys were playing and playing well. So Jeremy Ruckert's sort of the last of the 7 to show that he belongs at this level. And I'm not, don't say that, I'm claiming that Michael Clemens and Mitchell and all these guys are going to be around for 10 years. I don't know what the future holds. I just know that what we've seen from them early on suggests that they can play, and at the very least be role players. And if that happens, and if they play even better than that, that's a 7-for-7 draft class. And that's considering some of the draft classes this team has had in the past. We've seen the Idziks and the McCagnons, and even as much as people don't like to say it, the Parcells of the world have draft classes where they go 0 for 10, 1 for 12, 2 for 13. You pick 13 guys, 2 of them kind of do a little bit. Maybe you get one guy. So 7-for-7, unfathomable for a Jets fan if we're being honest. But I think Jeremy Ruckert gets them close to being that. So we'll get to see some of those guys tomorrow night against the Cleveland Browns. I'm looking forward to it. I know you're looking forward to it. Makai Becton, hopefully things have turned around for good, get on the right track. And Jason Brownlee, an opportunity to make a name for himself and others. There are a lot of guys, a lot of young guys on this team. Talked about them the other day on the roster show, the depth chart show with Dylan Terman. Be sure to check that out. Check Dylan out tonight with Chris Schubert of the Draft Network. They will be doing a little bit of preview for tomorrow night's game, as well as their summer breakdown of positional breakdowns. I didn't look. I forget which group they're doing. Might be O-line. No, it's not O-line. Whatever it is, check it out. They'll be on tonight. Jets kick off tomorrow, kick off the preseason, and then we've got football of some form, be it NFL or college, every weekend from now until the Super Bowl. I'm excited. I know you are. Check it out, Jets fans. We'll catch you next time.